All right, it is noon. Thank you so much to those of you who have joined us today for our companion animal webinar. My name is Dan Callahan. I'll be moderating this webinar. I work with the communications unit at the Minnesota Board of Animal Health. Just a few bookkeeping things before we get started. Your mics have been muted as you came in. If you have a question at any point during the presentation, please feel free to utilize the question and answer feature. Drop your questions in there, and we will address them as we move through, and there will also be time at the end for additional questions. And with that, I will pass it over to Dr. Steve Kivisto.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here this afternoon. My name is Steve Kivisto. I'm a senior veterinarian with the board, and my focus is the companion animal programs. And I also like to thank Lisa Eland. She's also with the companion animal programs, and she is our international travel guru, and she helped, I would say helped, by help I did 90% of this for me. So thank you very much for that. Just one quick thing. We get asked this question quite often regarding continuing education credit for these webinars. And they do count as 1 hour for CE credit. Because we are the Board of Animal Health, we don't need to get pre-approval from the Board of Vet Med, so they're not quote race approved, but they don't need to be. And we, from my discussion with the Board of Vet Med, as far as certificates go, they suggested that I just inform you to just save your the email you got for confirmation when you signed up for the webinar. Just save it for your records, and that's all you should need. So on that note, I will begin the webinar, and today we'll be talking about international importation of dogs and cats. I'm just going to ask quick, Dan, did that advance? Are we seeing the slides okay?
Looks great.
Great, thank you. So today we'll talk about the Certificate of Veterinary Inspection, the requirements on those forms, and just a reminder, the state of Minnesota, starting beginning of this year, we require for all exports, domestic exports, the electronic CVIs at this time, starting July 1st of this year, we will require electronic CVIs for all domestic imports as well. So for those of you who haven't made the switch, just FYI, it's here and coming depending on which direction you're sending animals. So we talk about those requirements. Then we're going to touch a bit on African swine fever and New World screwworm. New World screwworm has, as of late, become on the radar of many people, the USDA included. And so we have some new requirements as far as importation of animals from screwworm endemic countries. And then we'll get into details on those, the quarantine requirements for African swine fever, and then from animals coming from Mexico and other screwworm endemic countries. So the question is, who does regulate imports coming in, not just to the U.S., but to Minnesota? And so obviously in Minnesota, the Board of Animal Health. So we regulate what animals are being imported to the state. Nationally, the Customs and Border Patrol, the CDC, and the USDA. The CDC and USDA each have their own input on the requirements for, I'm just going to go dogs and cats because that's what my specialty is. So they have their requirements for importation, dogs and cats. And the Customs and Border Patrol, they're going to help them enforce those requirements. And when we get near the end, we'll kind of pop on the CDC and the USDA website. I'll show you a couple of links, and you can see there what they have to offer. So for Minnesota, what are our international import requirements? So the first is we need that certificate of veterinary inspection. And this would be for domestic and international travel. The document must include all of the following: the person's name and origin, so who you are and or who they are and where they're coming from, and then the person's name and destination. So if it's the same person, where they're going, where they're going to end up being. We do run into on, I would say, more just on the occasion where we'll get these international health certificates, and they will have maybe just the origin listed or the destination listed. We do need both. In those situations, we will typically reach out to the traveler, the owner, and let them know. We can talk a bit about how we check up on that later on. Animal details, so the name, species, sex of the animal, age, and microchips are required for international travel. So that is a requirement and needs to be listed on their certificate. And then the rabies information, vaccine serial number, the dates given, when it's due again, and then also the microchip number. And then the veterinarian's name, license number, signature, a statement that the animal is free from clinical signs of communicable and contagious disease. And a lot of times it's, especially on electronic ones, there's basically a checkbox that says that. And then again, proof of rabies, rabies vaccine, especially in animals over 12 weeks of age. The pet passport from the European Union often will have that information on there. And again, just to reiterate, all animals must be microchipped for international imports. And we do request that all the documents be sent to this email listed there, pet.travel.bah@state.mn.us, at least 7 days before they're planning on leaving and coming to the States, to Minnesota, but no more than 30, because after 30 days, then the CVI is no longer valid. But that 7-day time period, that allows us to connect with travelers. Like, for instance, if we find that they don't have all the information that they need on the CVI, it allows us to connect with them, let them know what we need, and hopefully get it resolved before they travel, so that they don't run into any issues when they get there, or they get here or get to the airport. And typically, we're going to do that by email the vast majority of the time, but we will on occasion have some phone conversations as well. So we work closely with the USDA and the CDC to enforce the import regulations that help prevent the importation of animal diseases into Minnesota. The CDC has their own specific requirements when it comes to rabies, and some of that those requirements depend on whether the country of origin is considered high rabies risk or not. But no dogs under 6 months of age can be imported into the U.S. regardless of their country of origin, or if they are re-entering the U.S. And I should click on that so we're talking rabies for a moment here. I'm taking a little detour. So this brings up an interesting conundrum. We have people from Minnesota that want to travel up into Canada per se, and the animal is under 6 months of age. They can get into Canada, but the problem is according to the CDC regulations, they can't come back until the animal is 6 months of age or older. And I've had conversations with other veterinarians. I have personally not had any luck talking to a human at the CDC, but other veterinarians and other people who deal with international imports have, and as far as we've been told, there's no exceptions to this. one one incident that Lisa had mentioned to me just earlier today or yesterday. People coming from Alaska with a puppy, for instance, if they're driving through Canada and they try to cross into Minnesota, they could potentially run into an issue. However, if they fly from Alaska to Minnesota, because then they are technically still flying domestically, they don't have that problem. So just a happy note there for you. African swine fever is one that we, and you'll see in a little bit, we have some pretty in-depth requirements for traveling from those countries. Foot and mouth disease, so touch a little bit on that. It's very important, particularly with our production animals, but the requirements for dogs are pretty minimal. And then screwworm. This would be the big new one that we're dealing with right now. And just going back with the foot and mouth disease, I kind of gloss over it because really the requirements for dogs are basically their fur and bedding must be free of excessive dirt, hay, or straw. They need to be bathed after they reach their destination, and separated from all livestock for 5 days after entering the U.S. And there's no documentation required to meet those standards. So when you compare it to African swine fever, it's a walk in the park. So what we do know, African swine fever is a highly contagious viral disease of domestic and wild pigs. It's found in multiple countries worldwide, including Asia, Europe, and the Pacific. In 2021, it was reintroduced into the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And that was the first detection in North America in 40 years. So the issue being the virus is highly resistant to the environment, so it can survive on clothing, boots, and shoes, and equipment, and those types of things for quite some time. There are some arthropod vectors, so ticks can carry and transmit it. And this is the big reason why here is if it is brought into the U.S., if we have a case pop up, it could potentially cripple the U.S. pork industry. And obviously that's big dollars to say the least. And just the presence of one infected pig can result in the culling of a large number of animals. And in fact, it will shut down movement of swine in the entire country for 72 hours is kind of the standard to allow time to make sure that things are contained and figure out where it came from and so on. So it's taken very seriously. So part of the requirements that we have then is when we have dogs and cats coming from countries that are either known to have African swine fever or are near an area. So the country itself doesn't necessarily have to have cases of it. It can be a country that neighbors it or in a particular geographic area. So these animals coming in, they have a required a minimum 10-day quarantine period, and we work closely with travelers. With the board, we work closely with them to make sure that they are completing the quarantine, and then there's a checklist of things they need to do to meet the requirements to be released from that quarantine. So those quarantine requirements, and again, there's a lot of information in this, so and I'll reiterate it later, but if anyone ever has any questions about an international import, please contact us, give us a call, or you can email us. At the end, I'll have an email address for you. But we are always willing to help and try to make this as easy as possible. So there are requirements for dogs and cats, but the bath part is for dogs only, thankfully. And it doesn't matter what shampoo there is used. They just need to be bathed to make sure that the virus is not within their hair coat any longer. They just need to be checked over for external parasites, particularly ticks. They must apply a flea and tick preventative. It has to be purchased in the US and be either FDA or EPA approved. Any transport associated materials, whether it be bedding, food, treats, and then animal waste, it all needs to be disposed of. It needs to be double bagged, and then it can be put in the trash, but it does need to be double bagged and disposed of properly. And that's for and the animal waste itself needs to be double bagged and disposed of for the full quarantine. Any items that were associated with the transport need to be cleaned and disinfected. Things that are non-disposable, like kennels, crates, dishes, or toys. So they're using a dilute bleach solution, 3/4 cups to 1 gallon of water to clean and disinfect. At least 10 minutes of contact time with that solution. And additional requirements, and when we say that, because if there's well, partly we somehow missed something here, but also we just want people to check in with us on when it comes to ASF. It's just better to make sure someone's asking us to, so they are meeting all the requirements. And then lastly, the STAR. So photo documentation must be completed. So any one of these steps, so when they're applying, before they apply the flea and tick product, they should have a picture of the product in the packaging, and then out of the packaging. As they're applying the product, as they're bathing the dog, even as so far as the double bagging of the bedding, anything that's going to be tossed out, and not that we count the number of bags of dog feces that have been accumulated, but we do like to see some evidence that some effort has been made to do so during that quarantine period. So if it's a swine disease, why do we worry so much about that with dogs and cats? Because they're not going to get infected with it, and people don't. But the biggest thing is that they can spread it. So it can hang out in their fur and their coat, can be spread by bedding, the kennel they're in, their food dishes, and so on. And anything that any contaminated pork they may have eaten can be, the viral particles can be present in the feces for up to 7 days. So that's why it's important that they do that double bagging and disposing for that 10-day period, that 10-day quarantine period. The importance now, the flea and tick product. So getting any of the ticks that happen to be on the animal off as soon as possible. And I mean, they can be disposed of the same way a lot of us do in the veterinary clinic. If they get a small little vial of rubbing alcohol and deposit said ticks in there until they are dead, that is adequate. So again, just reiterating that it's highly resistant in the environment, can survive on the clothing, equipment for 8 days or more, depending on the environmental conditions at that time. So we take it pretty seriously, and I'd say we get pretty good cooperation with people when they're asked to do these things. If they don't, basically what happens is that quarantine will get extended, and there is some potential for other actions, whether it be civil penalties or things of that nature. Yeah, Dan.
Hey, Dr. C, just want to break in. We had a question about the guidelines and the quarantine requirements for
Yeah,
ASF. Are those federal requirements or are they Minnesota specific?
those are Minnesota specific. Those are the guidelines. Now, if and maybe I can let Lisa either chime in now or later on to, but I believe they were developed kind of in line with some other states and the guidelines that they have. I don't think there's any necessarily uniform federal guidelines out there. Um, do you have any comment on that, Lisa?
No, you covered it pretty good.
Okay. I saw another hand flash quick, but it looks like it disappeared. Right.
I think we can move ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think we're here. So New World screwworm. So it's not a new pest, but it's becoming a new problem again now. In Mexico and in Central America, for many years, it had been eradicated, and it had been moved pretty much all the way down to the end of Central America. What's happened over the last couple years is through illegal movements and maybe a lack of vigilance on prevention, it has started to spread its way north up again through Central America and up into Mexico. And so this is the fly here. That's the adult female. And like most fly life cycles, they'll mate, lay eggs, typically in an open wound, but they can lay the eggs in mucous membranes as well. The larval stages will start to grow. Once they mature to a certain level, they drop off, fall into the ground, they bury, they pupate, and then they emerge, and they become adult flies, and the cycle continues. So the biggest difference between the screwworm larval stage versus what we're accustomed to in the world of maggots is that screwworm larvae feed on live tissue. So, and that's the biggest reason why it can be so detrimental to livestock and just animals in general, is that they get into a wound and they just start feeding, and they can, reduce production, cause death, a lot of discomfort. People can get it, and there's been cases of it. And if you read some of the descriptions that they describe how it feels, something quite literally crawling around under your skin, it sounds rather unpleasant. So, so it's a little bit more than just your standard, irritating fly maggoty kind of thing. And so this is here's a map of where it's occurring right now. Now this is just I'm going to say hop one of these here. Let me go back one slide. Oh, okay. So this is a map of and this is within the case that have popped up within 400 miles of the U.S. border right now. And so this is why the USDA is taking this very seriously. So what was once pushed, down out of Mexico is now working its way up. And efforts are being made to try to contain it. And the only thing that can be done to treat it in mass is the release of sterile flies. So they will sterilize the male flies, and they have some large production facilities. There's a couple, 2-3 in Mexico, and I believe they are, if they don't have it up and running, they're in the process of making one in Texas. So they produce these stale male flies. They release them into the environment, generally in front of the wave of infections. The females mate with the sterile males, and then they only mate once. And so then their eggs are non-viable. And so that's the really the way that they control these infections. The goal would be to push it back down again to back out of Central America. It'd be nice if it was eradicated completely, but that's probably not realistic. And on this map, it shows within 400 miles now, there's, this is as of March 4, 16,000 some cases. I believe there's over 100,000 cases plus that have been detected in this recent outbreak so far in Mexico and Central America. So it's coming on with a vengeance. So what we've elected to do here in Minnesota, and again, there's not necessarily a nationwide quarantine requirement for animals. I'm going to say dogs and cats. I don't believe cattle are allowed to be imported from Mexico at this time or other screwworm endemic countries. But for dogs in particular, the USDA does have some requirements, but not necessarily a quarantine requirement. So what we've decided to do, though, is to make one, and not to make everyone's lives miserable, but we also want people to take it seriously and understand that this is a real risk. And if there was, if there were no requirements whatsoever, I don't think people would think twice about taking Fifi and Fido down to Mexico with them when they go on vacation or whatnot. So when we get animals coming from Mexico or other New World screwworm endemic countries, we have a minimum of a 5-day quarantine upon arrival in Minnesota. And much like African swine fever, we will assign someone from the board to oversee that quarantine procedure. It's usually an office staff, again, communicating via email or phone. So another part of that requirement is that the animal be treated with a dose of an FDA or an EPA approved product for the treatment of screwworm. And they must be current. I couldn't think of a better way to put it, but by current, I mean, if the product lasts for 30 days, by the time they're coming back into Minnesota, the product should still be good. If they're going to be gone for more than 30 days, then they should plan on giving it again before they come back into the US. So that means either maybe taking another dose with them when they go, or 2-3 doses, whatever that happens to be, or figure out a way to get it while they're there. As of right now, there are 2 products that have emergency use authorization for treating screwworm, not necessarily preventing, but treating larval screwworm infection. It's NexGard and NexGard combo. So NexGard for dogs and NexGard combo for cats, and then Credelio for dogs and cats. So right now, those are the only 2 products that have got the emergency use authorization. I'd imagine that others will seek to get that, but as of now, it's just the 2. So much like with the ASF requirements, we do ask that photographs be taken of the animal. Again, in this case, the 2 products are oral, so they're being at least offered the medication, the packaging before and after it's opened. And so any animals that have not met these requirements, once they get to Minnesota, they will be quarantined for a minimum of 10 days. So instead of that 5 days, if they follow the rules, unfortunately, we have to extend that quarantine period out. We also then would require they see their veterinarian, and they get an examination. And there's a form that we will send the veterinary clinic that states that they've examined the dog and found it to be cat and found it to be free of screwworm, and basically looking for open wounds, draining tracts, or the larva for that matter. And so once that is been returned, then the quarantine would be released. And again, we would also like to have the the vet clinic name and the date of the appointment emailed to us, so then we can contact the clinic ahead of time and give them the form to fill out, and then also just kind of remind them of what they would be looking for and attesting to. The USDA has their own requirements, and really what it comes down to is before crossing back into the US, the dog, they don't have this requirement for cats, but the dog must be examined by a certified veterinarian in, let's say Mexico, but in the screwworm endemic country they're coming from. And the certificate must say that they've been examined and they are free of screwworm. So we would also need a copy of that for dogs. They won't give that for cats, so we don't require or expect that for cats, but we'll want a copy of that for any dogs coming in. And if you go on the USDA website, it does give some direction on how people can get a hold of when they're in Mexico, a veterinarian to help get that certificate. But it is something they need to do in Mexico. So just kind of the couple of websites that I would I've been told that you can click on these. If you're able to, I would encourage you to do so at this time. But the USDA website, if you get onto that page, you know, and this one goes right to the bring a pet dog into the US. If you scroll down a little bit, you know, it has some, you know, frequently asked questions. Go down a little further. There's a few drop boxes. The one for the foot and mouth disease affected countries. And again, there are requirements, but it just reiterates what I told you earlier. Just making sure that the firm bedding is free of excessive dirt, hay, or straw, and that the dog is bathed and separated from livestock for 5 days after entering the US. And if you go down one more and click on that, then you'll see that's where the pet dogs imported from screwworm affected countries. So it has a list there of the requirements for dogs. Again, there aren't any specific ones for cats at this point. Any ones that are requirements for cats would be, in our case, Minnesota requirements. And so I would encourage you to give us a call if you have to deal with that, or if there's any questions on that. As long as we're on this topic, this is also a good spot for when someone is traveling to another country. You can click on there is a link there where you can click on that says traveling either to or traveling from another country. And then you can put in a country's name, and it will tell you the requirements for going to that country, and then the requirements for traveling from that country to the US. And I would encourage anyone who deals with health certificates with their clients to encourage your clients to check out these websites too, because it's always good to spread the liability, so to speak. I mean, I think if someone's traveling out of country or coming into country, they should take a little bit of responsibility on their own to make sure that everything is as it should be before they get here, so they're not stuck at an airport, for instance. So that is all right there for them, and it's especially important when you're looking for export requirements, because they're so different from one country to the next oftentimes, and the paperwork necessary is different. And I'd also encourage anyone who has a client who mentions they plan on traveling internationally to have them look into it as soon as they can, because sometimes it can be time consuming, and you know, if they need to be vaccinated and have a titer checked 30 days later or 60 days later, or whatever it happens to be. They plan on traveling in 2 weeks. That's not going to work for them. So that's a great website. And then the CDC, I don't know if anyone remembers a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, when they came out with their new rabies requirements, and then a couple months later, or maybe less, changed those requirements. It's about as confusing still as it was then. But the long story short is the CDC only cares about rabies. And the trick there is, are they coming from a country that is high risk for rabies or not? If it is a country that is not high risk, the requirements are a little bit easier. There is trying to remember what the name of it is called, like a dog rabies certificate of some sort. I think it's
The
good for
dog import form.
Thank you. There you go. It's a dog import form, which is good for, I believe, 6 months. They get that, and then they're good to go for as far as the CDC is concerned. Now that doesn't change any import requirements that Minnesota has, or the USDA might have, but as far as the CDC is concerned, if they have that document in rabies, as far in the world of rabies, they're good to go. So that is the CDC website. That link there is a good place to find that information. The nice thing, I guess, if you could call it that, is there's a link on the CDC webpage that'll bring you to the USDA website, and a link on the USDA website that'll bring you to the CDC web page. So you can get back and forth between the two if necessary. So I believe, let's get back to my slide deck here. Yeah, I guess the big thing with all of this is that we are here to help you, and to help your clients for that matter. Any travelers, if there's, because there can be a lot of confusion with when we're talking about different countries, to just have them email us, call us, whatever, and we will work with them to try to figure out what they need to do. And so on that note, I think, and I will also add that the screw-in requirements, kind of an evolving thing that could change. But right now, we feel like we've got it pretty much how we want it. But again, it's always best just to check in with us to see if those requirements have changed, if you find yourself in that situation. So on that note, the email is right there, that pet.travel.bah@state.mn.us. You can send us an email there with your questions. You can email me directly. That would be Stephen.Kivisto at state.mn.us. Or you can call the main line and be asked to transfer to either well, just transfer to me and I can get you to where you need to be. So I know we kind of whipped through that maybe a little too quickly, so I will just say, give it the opportunity for anyone to ask questions at this point.
Thanks, Dr. Steve. I am not seeing any questions in the box yet. Again, folks, if you have questions or concerns or comments, please drop them in the Q&A box and we will handle them now.
And also give at least if there's something that we've talked about, I was going to mention but forgot to mention, this is your opportunity to correct me.
No, you did great, Steve. Everything was covered. Everything was pretty well talked through. I just encourage anyone has questions, feel free to email us. Little, small, doesn't matter. I'll be more than happy to help.
Cool. Thanks. I'll get your $20 to you later.
Wait, 20?
We'll negotiate that.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions come in right this moment, but please, folks, if you have questions or something comes up, an idea occurs to you, please reach out to our companion animal team. They will answer your questions. In the interest of being respectful of everyone's time, we will go ahead and start wrapping up here. If folks have questions, again, please drop them in. Thank you so much for joining us. As we've said here, please reach out if you have any questions. You can check out any of our previous companion animal webinars on our YouTube channel. I'm going to post that in the comments there. Additionally, follow us on Facebook. Follow us on LinkedIn. That's where you can find the latest goings on about our any upcoming events that we're participating in or hosting ourselves. There are a number of other webinars scheduled for this year, and we'd love to have you come to those as well. I will get that link dropped in the chat. And yeah, with that, thank you so much for attending. And this webinar was recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel as soon as we can get it up. So if folks weren't able to join us today, please point them in that direction. Okay.
Yeah.
Last
Yeah.
call.
Thank you all
Last
for your
call.
time. Yeah. Yeah. And again, personally, I'd like to thank everyone for being here. And also, if you have ideas or topics that you would like us to address in the future, please feel free to shoot them our way as well. So always happy to entertain other thoughts. So thank you again.